Hello there. How are you doing? I'm Ash from Jeddah Workshop, and I bet you didn't think that you'd be seeing another build video so soon, did you? No. I originally said I would make one once a week, and I think I did this one in less than a week. And it's Christmas, and I got loads and loads of stuff to do, so I have no idea how it's possible, but I did it. I'm on a roll. Are you impressed? I am. Anyway, this is the Darth Revan build. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy! Okay, so your kit will be a little bit different from this in that it will have ear hollows like on the inside of the back part of the helmet, but I designed this Darth Revan helmet from scratch on a customer request, and that process just takes a little while to, design the files themselves, make some modifications, print it out to test it, make more modifications if you need to, and I was just kind of aware that it'd been waiting a while, so I'd already printed this. Everything was good except the ear holes, so I thought I would just melt the plastic and make my own. As you can see, it's not that easy, and you probably shouldn't do that, but hey ho. I did kind of get there in the end. It's not pretty, but it's a little bit better. Okay, so these are the only accessories on the Darth Revan helmet. I like to keep all the little greebly bits separate just because it's easier to print without supports, and it's easier to do little detailed pieces separately because you can print at a finer layer height. So I print these at 0.2, which means they retain a higher detail and they're easier to fill and sand. And I'm using my method of using UV printer resin as a liquid, and I dilute it with isopropyl alcohol, and I put it in my air compressor and I spray it. And once it's sprayed on, I then use a UV light to cure it. It cures in seconds, literally like 5 to 10 seconds. I do about 2 to 3 layers. Yeah, actually probably no more than 2 layers on detailed bits. It fills them in really nicely, really quickly, and obviously you don't want to go too far on detail bits because you'll start filling in those, there's nice detailed lines, and it's just going to be impossible to sand out. So yeah, about 2 layers on this. I then do exactly the same on there's only 2 main parts to this helmet, the front and the back. Because I print the mask and any main components of the helmet, I print it at 0.3mm layer height because it's much faster. It saves you like 10 hours or something. So I do a couple more layers on these prints of the UV resin out of my air gun. I'll do at least 3 coats, sometimes a little bit more if there's areas like the very top of the prints usually need a little bit more, or the very bottom where the supports have been. But yeah, not a great amount of detail on this helmet, so it's actually a nice easy build for a change. And again, I just cure it with a UV light. The light is 405 nm, that's the UV wavelength, which matches the 3D printer resin, which is why we can use it as a liquid and then it turns to a solid. It's just super efficient method for filling. The back piece has a couple of kind of fine indented lines, which just it retains a bit of the support material. So if you've ordered this kit from my website, don't be surprised if it still has that in, because I probably couldn't be bothered scraping it all out before shipping it to you. I leave the sexy parts for you to do, right? But yeah, just grab some sort of metal fine tool, I'm just using like a weird little pick here or a screwdriver, and you can just scrape those bits out really easy. And then exactly the same process for the back of the helmet. I'm not sure if I did 3 layers or 2 layers on this because the back is quite detailed. I probably did do 3 to be fair, because you can get in those lines with sandpaper, so you don't have to worry too much about filling them in and losing all that detail. And of course, if you don't have an air compressor gun, it's absolutely fine. Just use a sponge. Basically, just get some UV resin. If you're just doing the one helmet, you can buy it in 500 gram or half a litre bottles, and it's cheaper. Just pour it into a, like a Tupperware container. You don't need to dilute it at all. I just dilute it so it sprays through my gun. And just grab a sponge or a sponge brush, and yeah, just sponge it on in thin layers basically. You can get exactly the same result with a sponge. It might take you a little bit longer, but that's how I started before I got my air compressor. And yeah, just go over it, give nice even coats, about 3 layers, cure it with a UV light, and then once you've got it all on there, it will be kind of gloopy and greasy. So you don't want to sand it like that. You basically just clean it off with isopropyl, and you get a super nice clean finish, and it's ready to sand like straight away. So everyone's favourite part is the sanding. It actually is my favourite part because it's weird. You look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I've got to sand all this, and I've got to sand it multiple times with different grades of sandpaper. But once you pick it up and once you just crack on and start it, your brain shuts off and it takes you to this really calm, meditative place. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know I talk a lot about meditation, and it's been a huge component of my life for about 10 years now. However, meditation doesn't get any easier. It's the same thing every time you sit down to do it. So if you don't know how to meditate, or you've never achieved a state of meditation, it's just not your thing. It doesn't matter, because any form of mindful exercise that's just simple and kind of monotonous, that you don't have to think about, you just do it, you achieve the same state. So seriously, I'm not even like joking about this. Building Star Wars helmets really saved my life in terms of mental health. Just cracking on building helmets, sanding for like hours and hours a day, every day. I found it's where it took me to my calm place. Let's put it that way. And I started to feel the benefits, because once I'd finished sanding and you get this nice smooth helmet, it makes you feel great, right? You walk out there going, I don't know what just happened, but I feel good, and I've got this cool new helmet that's like taking shape. So yeah, don't knock the sanding. It's an important part of the process, and it's like highly beneficial in my opinion for just positivity and calmness and relaxation and creativity. So just go for it, get stuck in there. I start with a 60 grit using UV resin. If you've never used the UV resin filling method before, it's a tiny bit harder, not much, but a little bit harder than using something like Bondo or car body filler. With that stuff, I would start with 120, no coarser. But with this, I start with a 60 grit, which is coarser, and I don't go crazy with it. I just go over the whole helmet to sort of break the resin in a bit. And then once I've done a full sand in 60, I then go to 120, do a full sand in that. Then I go down to 240, do a full sand in that, and then I go down to 400 and do a full sand in that. Once I've done that, I will then either use like a high build primer, either a 2K or out of a can, or you can use spray putty, which is incredible. In this case, I'm literally just using a grey primer, because although I can feel it's getting smooth and taking shape, I already know there's some imperfections on there. So instead of just filling them with like a lesser material like a high build primer, I know I'm probably going to do some more UV resin or Bondo, which is, it's more of the heavy duty fillet. I'm anticipating that I'm going to need to use that. So I just use the grey primer so I can see what I'm doing, so I can see the imperfections of the helmet and which areas I need to concentrate on filling. So because the UV resin method is quite messy, and even though it's faster than using Bondo, or in this case I'm using a product called Lechler Spatter Rapid 1K stopper. That's like the UK equivalent of Bondo, basically. If you're in America, you would use Bondo spot on glazing putty. This is the same stuff. It's like toothpaste. You spread it on, it dries hard, but it's sandable and it's really good. It does take longer than the UV resin method and isn't quite as heavy duty. It's basically for pinholes. But yeah, I like variation. I probably just couldn't be bothered getting the UV resin thing out again and, you know, cleaning everything and setting it all up. So that's what I'm doing here. However, sod's law, when I really looked at the mask, even though I did probably at least 3 layers on this, it's going to require some more, which is just a little bit too deep for the glazing putty. So, you know, resin it is, may as well. I always try to do easy first, but sometimes you just, you know, swings and roundabouts. You got to assess the situation, what's going to work best, and what you can be bothered doing, you know. But in the end, UV resin wins, and it is actually much faster because there's no drying time, and it goes straight on. You don't have to spread it with your finger. What can I say? I'm crazy. I'm a crazy guy. I do weird things. But I got there in the end. Everything is now nice and smooth. So it's time. I've filled it, sanded it, reprimed it, and now it's time for metallic paint, which is pretty exciting because it means you're getting closer and closer to finishing. So I do this as a base coat because I'm going to do some weathering. My customer wanted 2 scars, but not just like paint chips, he wanted actual gouges. So you can see there, I just used a soldering iron and just kind of gouged through it to give some realistic scrapes. And I use Montana chrome paint as a base layer. It's a super good paint, goes on nice and thick, it dries nice and fast. I'm doing this on both the front and the back. Okay, I did exactly the same on the accessories, and it's time to lacquer those now. So I just use high coat gloss lacquer. As you can see though, as soon as you spray it onto that beautiful shiny chrome, it just dulls it. It completely takes all shininess out of it. But don't worry, because there is a technique to bring that back. And as this helmet has, you know, the whole back of it is silver basically. The whole front of it is silver with some paint on it, with some red paint. So it's important to keep it shiny and metal looking. But also this helmet is quite unique because it's not just pure silver. Some people do it that way. You know, I'm an OCD freak, so I like to get it right and I like to experiment and figure things out. You'll see that I have a few different methods for the different areas of the helmet. So we're going to jump back to the mask here. I haven't lacquered this. This is just pure. It's got, you know, the grey primer paint and then the chrome paint on top and no lacquer. Because what I'm going to do now is basically mask off for the red paint on the front of the helmet. But before we do that, it's time to do some liquid latexing for the weathering for all the paint chips. So that's why we do the metallic base coat underneath, because then when you liquid latex, it's going to keep those chrome areas. So when you spray the red paint on the top, once that's dry, you can peel the liquid latex off, and it's got all your nice natural paint chippings with actual kind of paint layerage, rather than, you know, just painting it red and then painting some chrome on top. It doesn't look right, it doesn't look as realistic, and it doesn't feel right. So I'm going around all the edges, I'm going into those deep scars there. It's just off camera, but I am using some reference pictures. So yeah, just go around the whole helmet with the whole mask, sorry, with your liquid latex wherever you want it. I'm trying to do it as accurate as possible to the game, and some paintings, like comic book paintings, like just beautiful artwork of Revan. You can use a heat gun just to accelerate the drying process. It's winter here in the UK as I'm making this, so it's freezing cold in my workshop. but do just be so careful when using a heat gun on 3D printed parts, because you can melt right through them in sort of, you know, 5 or 6 seconds. Alright, so I'm just going to do a paint test here on a white surface because I have a few different reds. I think I've already got an idea of which one is going to work the best, you know, just from the lid, but it's always best to just do a test if you've not used certain paints before, or if you're building a brand new helmet and you just want to get it right. You know, there's no point in rushing, just do a test. So here we go. Again, I spray all the edges first, and then I do the overall thing. It just helps, not just with overspray texture, but it helps you to just get all the parts, because it's so easy to miss, you know, like a whole side, just because you haven't seen it. Okay, remember when I said I have a method for bringing that metal sheen back? Just spray it again with the chrome paint. But what you do is, so you primer it and then spray it with the chrome paint, then you gloss lacquer it, and then you wait for that gloss lacquer to dry, but not completely dry, just before it's dry, so it's still just a tiny bit tacky. Then you spray over it with the chrome paint again, and that paint will set into the lacquer itself. Okay, here's one of my favourite parts. It's time to peel off that lovely liquid latex to reveal your nice battle chrome damage underneath. I just use my finger. It's easier if you do have rubber gloves on, but I don't. It's starting to look like Revan. I've got a nice deep red on there. I've got the chrome battle damage around it. It's just always an exciting part of the process. It's like another layer of the character itself. Okay, now part of this crazy multi-layered process is what I'm doing now is going over the red with a matte lacquer, because I don't want that to be glossy at all. It'll just look weird, you know. Battle damaged and glossy looks kind of odd, and I know that I'm going to weather it later. Unfortunately, with the metallic underneath, you kind of just got to take a hit on that. The lacquer, whether it's matte or gloss, will dull it. And there's not much you can do other than go over it again with some chrome paint or like a chrome pen or something. But I do the edges with one of those. But I find if you use a chrome pen to go over paint chipping, you then sort of defeat the object, because you're filling that sort of layer back up to the layer of the red paint in this example. And I've tried it on Boba Fett helmets, and although it looks nice and shiny and chromy, you lose the authenticity of the paint chipping. So I'm just going to take a hit on that one. As you can see on here, I'm now masking off on the back of the helmet, because those nice curvy pipes that you can see and a couple of other elements of the helmet are a much brighter silver than the rest of the helmet. The rest of the helmet is silver, but it's kind of dark, like a smoky dark colour, and I want to keep these nice and bright, so I'm going to mask off those to concentrate on the surrounding areas. Now once all that's done, I'm going to use the gloss lacquer technique again. It's a high coat clear lacquer, it's called. It is gloss. All the brighter areas are masked off because I'm going to do something different on them, which you'll find out in a little while. And yeah, let that dry. Okay, now it is time to remove the masking from the surround of the red, because we need to get that kind of dark and smoky metallic. And the way we're going to do that is to actually mask over the red. Remember, we painted that red and then we used the matte lacquer, so that red is basically finished and good to go. But for our next method, we're going to have to use some gloss lacquer over the surrounding chrome, and we don't want that gloss lacquer to get onto the red, because it will just defeat the purpose of the matte lacquer and keeping it nice and kind of weathered and battered and things like that. So obviously your red paint has to be completely dry, so don't do this, you know, just a couple of hours after the red has dried. Like, leave it at least 24 hours, because you don't want to be peeling that lovely nice red paint off when you peel the tape off. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, you will have heard of this stuff if you've built a Mando helmet, or if you've seen my Mandalorian build video on Instagram, or just read any of my descriptions, or watched anyone else make one. So this is called graphite rub, and it's basically the stuff that is inside a pencil, but it's in dust form. And remember, we masked off the red paint here, then we sprayed it with clear lacquer, gloss lacquer, and we let that dry, but again, not all the way. It needs to still be just a little bit tacky so that it absorbs the graphite rub when you do it. And notice that I'm just applying it around the edges, because there are still bright silver parts in this on Revan's helmet. The dark it's not quite like dirt and grime. It's kind of like a dull shine, almost like battered aluminium. You know, when you scrape the surface of aluminium, it's sort of a darker colour. It kind of looks like that to me, so that's the effect that I wanted to achieve. And then, again, very exciting part, remove the tape and see how it looks, see if we are achieving our goals. It feels like it. And there we go. I'm just using my air compressor just to blow the excess dust off here. And you'll find that once the lacquer fully dries, which probably takes about a day, that graphite rub is just set in there. It doesn't come off, it doesn't get on your fingers, it doesn't dirty things up. It is fully set in there. So exactly the same process on the back of the helmet. Remember, we masked off those pipes because we want to keep those nice and bright silver, no graphite rub or dust on those at all. And I sprayed the rest of the back of the helmet with gloss lacquer, and then we're just going around it with the graphite rub again. And you'll see at the end that they're both silver, but they're two forms of silver, and they are quite different, and it makes a noticeable difference. So now it's time to see if it actually works. So we peel the paint off, and as you can see, it's so much brighter, and it really does have a nice impact on the helmet to what it's meant to be like. It took me a while to figure out how to do it, but yeah, I just found this is the best method. I know it's a lot of messing about with tape and masking and cutting around edges and stuff, but again, it's kind of like sanding. Once you start it, it just turns into a nice kind of meditative process, and you don't know if it's going to work. But once it does, once you get those results, all that time just kind of drifting away, thinking about nothingness, or listen to music, or I like to listen to podcasts and talks and lectures and stuff while I'm working. It feels nice once a plan comes together. Alright, so now it's time to apply the accessories, the ear vents and the two little smaller vents. So all I do is I sand the back of the accessories and on the helmet itself, because that's been covered in paint and lacquer and it's super smooth. So you want a good key, and you want a semi-rough surface where you're going to glue. So I sand the helmet and the back, and then I just use normal super glue, Gorilla Glue in this case, a couple of dabs, and then stick them in place, and then I keep them there with masking tape to set and cure overnight. And exactly the same with the chin greeblies on the front mask. Alright, now it's time to measure up for the visor. So I just use some flexible cardboard, and once it's in there, grab your pencil, draw around all the edges. Then you've got a nice template to use to cut out on your actual plastic visor, and always cut at least a centimetre excess around the template, because that's going to be where you're going to fix it into place. So I'm using a replacement grinder shield here. So as well as the nice dark smoky graphite rub that I used to darken the chrome, I'm also going to use some actual weathering. So this is just a bit of black acrylic paint in my airbrush, and I'm just finally going around into the edges where it would naturally accumulate dust and dirt and stuff. So I'm going around all the edges and over the red, You can see the difference it makes when you put a bit of black airbrush over the red. It just really helps to kind of wear it down and just add tonality and depth to it. And I'm doing exactly the same on the back piece of the helmet, just going into all the grooves. You can see it taking shape already and how much it adds definition to those lines. I'm also using a bit of the dry brush method here, and I think I mentioned in one of my other videos maybe the waxer build. So normal dry brush method is you get some acrylic paint, you water it down, you put it on with a brush, and then you wipe it off with kitchen roll, and you get a nice kind of black wash and you get darkness into all the grooves. But when you do it in combination with using an airbrush, because there's a little bit of paint thinner in the airbrush paint, when you add some thinner to it, when you spray it on and wipe it off, it just gives this really weird, beautiful look that is different to the dry brush method, because because it sets in there. Wherever you rub it off, it really does rub off, but it leaves a kind of a smearing kind of look. It's one I use on basically every helmet now because I just love it so much, and it's quite hard to describe until you try it. Okay, so it's time to set the visor into place now. So I used Milliput. It's a 2-part putty. You rub it, mix it together, and then it dries rock hard. And the thing I prefer about Milliput is you have a much longer working time. Steel stick or plastic weld sets in about 10 minutes. Milliput takes about 4 hours. But keep that film layer on until right at the end. You want to keep it protected. If you're anything like me, who's just messy and my workshop is a complete tip, you don't want anything to scratch that visor, you know? But what I do before applying the Milliput is I just grab a bit of sandpaper, like 120 grit, and Creme said cut at least a centimetre excess of around your template of your visor. That's what this is for. You basically then sand those edges of where you're going to put the Milliput, just so it's got a nice key, because obviously visors are extremely smooth and you want your Milliput to stick to something. It's usually absolutely fine sticking to the inside of the 3D printed helmet, because it has those 3D printed lines which you've not filled on the inside, so plenty of things to stick to. And then I stick the Milliput in the corners of the helmet where it's going to support it the best, and then I go over that with some super glue that I just brush on, and that's just to seal that Milliput in, make sure it doesn't crack. Okay, now it's time to insert the neodymium magnets, which basically hold the two parts of the helmet together. I did it this way because if it was one whole helmet, the back of the helmet is really tight, so you wouldn't be able to get it on and off your head easier, whereas this way you can just snap it on and off with magnets. And also, if you just want the mask, you can get that separately, because Revan obviously wears a hood, so you don't technically need the back of the helmet, although I think it's awesome. It really reminds me of like Predator technology for some reason. So I'm just cutting some black felt here to line the inside of the helmet, starting with the mask. It just makes it look neater, and it's obviously much more comfier for your face. And basically off camera, I spray the felt with spray adhesive, and then once I've got it all in place, I go around the edges with hot glue, and that keeps it all in nicely. Darth Revan done. there you go. Did you enjoy that? I hope you did. Yeah, it was a really fun build. If you do want to order this same kit yourself and build your own Darth Revan helmet, just head to my website, www.jeddaworkshop.co.uk. Don't let the co.uk fool you, I do ship worldwide. Also, if you are a printer like myself, you own a 3D printer, you can get the files there, and they are the new updated ones with the ear holes, so it's much more comfortable. Did you like the song, by the way? Did you recognise anyone's voice on there? That was me. I was in a band when I was 18 years old. And man, just when I'm editing the clips together, I get so bored of like generic stock music that just doesn't go anywhere. I wanted a song for this one, and I'm like, I don't own the copyright to any songs. Oh, except that band I was in when I was 18. And we did all right. We played a gig in New York, I will have you know. It was, yeah, fun times. I was in it for like 5 years. So like, what, 18 till 23 or something? I had dreadlocks. I thought I was cool. But I do like that song. Anyway, if you like my work, you may want to follow me on Instagram. I am at Jeddah Workshop. I'm also on Facebook for the old people. No offense, I'm one of those old people. And this is definitely going to be the last video before, this year. I have got so much work to do still. I'm kind of freaking out about it, to be honest. So I'm going to have to just cut this video short now and just go and do stuff. But God, what does 2023 bring? I don't know about anyone else, but this has been the weirdest year of my entire life. I'm just, we're all still recovering like from the trauma of the pandemic. Nobody talks about it. I do. And other things that happened just pre-pandemic have shifted and changed for me personally in my personal life in such pronounced, dramatic, weird ways that I can't even put them into words. But I do feel a shift. It's the winter solstice tomorrow. It's when the sun returns. I'm feeling hope and change finally for 2023. I hope this resonates with you. So yeah, what I want to say is have an absolutely brilliant Christmas. It's all about just having fun with your friends and your loved ones and your family and just being present, isn't it? It's about just chilling the heck out. You don't have to worry about anything. The stress of the year is over. There's a brand new year coming. Make all your New Year's resolutions now, not on the 1st. The 1st is nothing. It's just a non-day. That's why nobody sticks to their New Year's resolutions, because you've got to be making them now. This is where the energy is right for it. So I'm going to go away and think about what mine are. I hope you do too. And I just hope you have really, really fun, lovely times with your family and your mates. And a nice relaxing break. And I will see you next year. 2023, mate. Oh my gosh. Whew, what's it gonna bring? I don't know. Okay, I've been Ash from Jeddah Workshop. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, all that stuff. You are brilliant. Without further ado, namaste. This is the way. 2023!
Doesn't sound so bad to me.